Hey, Dedric, thanks so much for being on the show. If you could, please introduce yourself to our audience and provide a brief overview of your background leading up to right around the time you got into real estate.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Kerwin. I really appreciate it. I remember meeting you and your two brothers, probably 3, 4 years ago
Yeah.
now, at a RIA meeting in Greensboro. It was a deal maker session. And I was very impressed by you guys then. I've been very impressed by what you guys have been able to accomplish the last few years. So it's a pleasure being on here.
Yeah.
But yeah, my name is Dedric Polite. I'm a full-time real estate investor here in North Carolina. I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm a corporate America dropout. I did what my parents told me to do. They told me to go to school, get good grades, get out of school, and get a good job with benefits. I grew up in the Boston, Massachusetts area. Went to Amherst College on a full academic scholarship. Graduated from there, and I went in right into a career in sales and pharmaceutical sales. So I did that for about 6 years. Then I went into software sales. But all the time I spent in corporate America, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, always wanted to be my own boss. My goal was, once I read the Rich Dad Poor Dad, is I wanted to be financially free. And I read Rich Dad Poor Dad at age 21, right around the age you guys were when you guys started. And that was my whole goal. It's like, hey, I'll work in corporate, but my goal is to buy real estate, own businesses so I can achieve financial freedom. And fast forward to where we are now, and we are financially independent. I work for myself. I don't have to work if I don't want to. Work in my real estate business because I love it. I'm passionate about it. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Oh, that's awesome. I know we have a lot of parallels. You also grew up with a single mom. I believe you
Yep.
were working class family, so same a lot of similarities, and it's really inspiring. I think you were one of the first people that got us to break the mold because when we walked into the room, I remember that day we had a wholesaler sticker on our sticker, and you said, "Take that off. You're not wholesalers. You're investors. Like think bigger." And we never even
Yeah.
thought of that. That was one of the first paradigm breaks we had in this space. We thought we were already ahead of the game, but there's just kind of one of those moments that showed you there's still so much more to grow and so much more to go. And that was really awesome. So I appreciate that. You were one of our first mentors. So thank you.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
And I heard in the past you kind of referred to yourself as a entrepreneur when you were first starting out. You did some education and you weren't really you were interested in being an entrepreneur, but you hadn't really taken action. I'd love it if you could kind of explain how you made that transition from being an entrepreneur to becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's a good question, Corinne. It was really fair. It was a fear of failure. Like I said, I came from a very privileged educational background. Again, I was able to achieve, get scholarships to go to some of the top schools in the country. But those schools really prepare you to work for someone else, even though they were Ivy League schools. So, and it was considered like you were considered being out there or being from left field if you went into entrepreneurship. It was like, no, everybody goes to Wall Street, they work at a bank, or they go to law school, become a lawyer, or they become a doctor. Entrepreneurship was like, whoa, what are you doing? Right. So it was really me and my wife because I read all the books, listened to all the tapes, but I was afraid to really go for it and take the leap. When I met her, she was totally opposite. She was a serial entrepreneur. Since she was a teenager, she was starting businesses. Not all of them were successful. Some of them failed, but she learned. She always had 2 or 3 jobs and always had 2 or 3 businesses on the side. So her mentality, we started dating. We were both in our 20s, and she would look at my bookshelf and she was like, hold on, you got like 100 books on like real estate and entrepreneurship. She was like, have you read all these? I'm like, yeah, I've read them all. She was like, wow. She was like, okay, well, why aren't you doing real estate? And I was like, that good question. And she really challenged me on it. And actually our first business that we did together was we did Airbnb.
Mhm.
So we were dating and she was always at my house and her apartment was sitting vacant in Boston. And a coworker of mine, he would always brag like, yeah, I went to New York for the weekend and my trip was paid for. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I rented my apartment in Cambridge out on Airbnb and it paid for my trip to New York. So that's how this is in 2012. When I first heard about Airbnb. So what we did is we took her vacant apartment since she was always staying at my house and we put it on Airbnb. And we made something like $30,000, $40,000 in a few short months. We were able to pay for her mom's wedding in cash. And that was our first business we started together.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. That's very inspiring. And a lot of the interviews you guys do together are just really inspirational. It shows how much of a power couple you guys are. So it's really inspirational for not just people who are in current relationship, but people that are aiming to build a really strong relationship once they reach that level and that point.
Thank you.
Um,
It's
so
not easy. It's
yeah,
not easy working with your spouse. Some couples they can't work together and they shouldn't work together. So it really depends on the person you're with. But we're really big on co-preneurship, whether it's your girlfriend or your spouse or even your brothers, right? You guys are co-preneurs because you
Yep.
are brothers, but you're also doing businesses together.
Yeah. Any advice? I'm just curious. Any advice for anyone who might want to work? Because there's a lot of there's some there's two schools of thought. It seems some people say don't work with family, and other people say dude go for it. And I am part of that second school of thought where if it works, and it works really well. And those are the people that have your back, and you can say whatever you want to say to them, and they're not going to get butthurt about it. They're going to take it the right way, and it's just about business. So how have you been able to kind of, I guess, divide it? And do you have any advice for someone who might be considering or maybe contemplating going into business with family?
Yeah, that's a good question. So some of the most successful businesses are family businesses. I mean, you look at the Hilton family, right? They own billions of dollars of real estate and hotels. They probably sold it all and they just licensed it now, but they were started by, what was it, Conrad Hilton, and now he's created
Mhm.
generational wealth. The Marriotts, the Trumps, the what's Trump's son-in-law's name? Kushner.
Yes.
That's a real estate dynasty, right? Family started as a family real estate business. So there's definitely benefits of it. I think the key is the family members or the partners involved, their skills should be complementary, right? So you don't want to have three sales guys in a room because they're going to butt heads because they all do the same thing, right? You want to have different complementary skills that each person adds their own unique skill set that helps the whole team succeed.
Yeah, you've talked about how Krystal, I believe, is the visionary and you're the integrator. Can you kind of define what those are and maybe explain how that manifests itself within your real estate business?
Yeah, so we learned that from a book we read early in our career called Traction by Gino
Mm.
Wickman. And it talks about, how you can gain traction as a business is really getting clear on your goals, right? What is your mission? What is your vision? What are your goals? And part of that was identifying that in a business is two different types of people. You have your visionary and you have your integrator. The visionary is the one where they're not really a details person. They can be at times, but they are someone that dreams big. They cast a big vision and they cast that vision for the team. Now, when it comes to implementation, they may drop the ball because that's not their strong suit. While you have people called integrators, or the integrators are like, okay, show them a vision or a big goal, and they're the people who can put together the roadmap and kind of navigate you there. So again, my wife is a visionary in our partnership. I'm the integrator, and we both have some aspects of where we cross over a little bit, but that's where we got that from.
That's awesome. It's really inspirational to hear. My brothers and I, we were dropped out of college once we started real estate. So we never got into the corporate world, but it's really interesting to learn from someone who came from that corporate background. And you like to say you had the golden handcuffs for some time. And I think that's even harder because for me, I mean, I didn't really have much to lose, but you kind of had a lot more to lose than I did, and I
Right.
could always go get a job, but you kind of already understood and knew you had created this paradigm about how making money worked and what job and the credit card you mentioned, the company credit card and things like that. So I'd love it if you could provide some advice to someone who might be in that same role. Do you think that someone should full send into real estate from their job and like quit their job and leave? Or should they maybe, I mean, it should be more and more practical and strategic with slowly leaving their job and firing their boss, as you guys like to say?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wouldn't say just go ahead and quit your day job and dive into real estate investing. I wouldn't advise that. Why? Because real estate investing is it's a real business. It's not get rich quick overnight. You can become rich or wealthy over time. So don't quit your day job. I know people who close one deal, close two wholesale deals, and they make 8 grand and they quit their job. I do not advise doing that. You want to have a systematic approach to doing it. Now with me, like you mentioned, I had what's called golden handcuffs. I was making over 6 figures, multiple 6 figures. I had the company car, the company credit card. I worked from home. I owned my own house. I was comfortable. I was what everyone would determine. Oh, this guy is
Mhm.
successful. But I wasn't really happy in pursuing the corporate. I call it the corporate rat race. Some people are happy in corporate America, so I don't knock it, but it just wasn't for me long term. But then you have what's called the college trap. So I call that the corporate trap. And then you got the college trap. So college trap is, yeah, you go to school, but how many kids do you know go to school and then they major in something that they're not really passionate about? They just do it maybe because their parents tell them, well, that's what they think they're supposed to do. And they get out of school with 100 grand in student loan debt and they can't even find a job in their major, right? The
Yeah.
best paying job they find is like making 30, 40 grand a year. That's
Yeah.
the college trap, right? Think about all the student loan debt that people, have billions and trillions of dollars. They're starting to forgive some of that, but it's still lots of money people got to pay back. So that forces folks to go into jobs and careers they don't like just to pay back that student loan debt. So, I applaud you guys for taking the leap because I'm sure there were people who are like, man, the Donis brothers, they're dropping out of school to do this real estate thing. I'm like, what are they, nuts? But you guys took a bet on yourself, and
Yep.
I'm proud of you guys for that.
I appreciate that. And it's so just great points there. So I actually recently learned that on the government's balance sheet, student debt is one of the biggest assets on their balance sheet. And I thought that was so interesting because I mean, that just kind of, it might dive into the why it's so pushed in society to go to school. But it's funny because I go back and see my college friends a lot of the times and I'll ask them, hey, like just curious, I'm honestly curious. Are you studying what you want to do? Like, is this your passion? And a lot of times, no, they're not studying something. They think it's what's going to make them money. And on top of that, they have no plan after college. And we're not like against college at all. We just think if you're going to go to college, be intentional with it and don't go to waste your time. And most people, it's sad to say, but most people do just kind of waste time or they're just drifting, which is really sad. And I think it was really hard for us to see that when we were in college, but now on this other side, and yeah, we're not going to go on that rabbit hole, but point is, I think self-education and traditional education, they can both work depending on who you are and what your goals are. And I know you guys were big advocates for self-education. When you were first getting into real estate, you invested, I believe, over 100,000 before you even closed your first deal. And that's amazing. I love to hear that. Can you kind of explain why it's so important to invest in education and maybe also tie that into how that led to your first real estate deal?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so again, we both graduated from college. I went to Amherst College, which is an Ivy League school up in Massachusetts. My wife went to Northeastern University, which is a very good university. But again, they didn't teach us how to be entrepreneurs. They didn't teach us how to buy properties and own properties, right? I majored in sociology. What the hell are you going to do with sociology? I had no interest in it, no passion. It was just like a default, right? Um, so yeah, my wife, I forgot what she majored in, but that's the other thing about college is a lot of these majors are not even practical to today's society. Like, so you mentioned self-education. So we're really big on self-education, but we take it a step further. We're really big on financial education, right? So hiring coaches, mentors who are further ahead financially than us and learning how did you get to where you are financially and them teaching you the principles. So again, what we did when we first got started is we were like, hey, we don't want to keep banging our head against the walls trying to figure this out. You can only get so far with self-education, right? We watch tons of YouTube videos and you figure out some of it, but you can only get so far, right? You may even close a deal or two with YouTube University and Podcast University, but it comes to a point where like you need to be able to pick up the phone and call someone like, hey, I got a deal, I'm stuck, can you help me? And that's when we started hiring mentors and coaches. I remember one of my first mentors, I told one of my corporate mentors, like, hey, I really want to get into real estate. He was like, you need to call this person. She's been flipping houses for 20 years. She's been teaching real estate. She actually was a teacher for Rich Dad, Poor Dad's education company for 20 years. So I called her. I was like, hey, we want to do real estate. I think her coaching fee was like $5,000 for her to like spend 3 days with us teaching us how to flip houses. We spent that. We didn't have it in cash. We put it on a business credit card. Spent a weekend in Charlotte with her. And after that, we did the course, but then we were like, oh, shoot, we don't have any money to flip houses. Like we don't got 100 grand, 200 grand in the bank to start flipping. So we were like, okay, we need to start wholesaling first to build up some capital and then get into flipping. So she was like, okay, you want to learn wholesaling, go to this marketing boot camp because wholesaling is really marketing. You're really marketing for motivated sellers. That's the essence of wholesaling. So we spent another 3 to 5 grand going to this marketing boot camp to learn how to find motivated sellers. Again, we hadn't closed any deals yet. We were investing in ourselves. Was it scary? Yes. Were we like, oh shoot, like I hope this works? Yeah, because it was going on our credit. Right. Luckily, we had business credit as well, so it didn't really affect our personal credit. We had built up some business credit, but again, we had spent in the tens of thousands of dollars, and we were trying to close deals. It took us like a year and a half before we closed our first wholesale deal, and this was in 2018. But once we closed our first deal, it was just a snowball avalanche effect from there.
Yeah, and the rest is history. You guys have been killing it ever since. I'd love it if you could maybe just quickly define what wholesaling is for anyone in our audience who might not be aware.
Yeah, wholesaling is one of the greatest inventions ever. I love it, right? We are buy and hold investors, but we love wholesaling. Why? Because it's one of those exit strategies where you can take little to no money and you can literally create money out of thin air. So wholesaling is basically getting a property under contract at a wholesale price. Why would someone sell you a property at a wholesale price? You may ask, they have a problem. Maybe they just got divorced and they got to sell the house fast. Maybe their job moved them from North Carolina to California and they got to move and they don't want to pay two mortgages. They got to sell fast. Maybe they inherited a property in Durham, but they live in Phoenix now, and the property needs work and the roof is leaking. These are all reasons where someone like wouldn't want to put the property on the market with a realtor and have to wait 2 or 3 months, or the realtor doesn't want to touch it because it's an ugly house. That's how we find sellers with these problems. We get a property on contract at a wholesale price, and then we find an investor who has cash, who's looking for a deal, and we literally assign our contract, assign our equitable interest over to that investor for a fee called a wholesale fee or an assignment fee. So we've literally made tons of money doing that. And we've taken those wholesale fees that we've made and we've invested it into rental properties. So that's how we've been able to amass a portfolio of over 60 properties, and it's worth over $5 million of rental properties.
That's awesome. And we also started wholesaling, and you know that, but I don't know if everyone in the
Yep.
audience knows. We started wholesaling houses, and that was where we eventually were prioritizing active income at the time. And I think that's where our paths differ, because it seems like you guys understood the importance of holding properties long term. I believe your goal at the beginning was to hold properties and buy and hold. Could you expand on the power of wholesaling houses, generating leads, and then having essentially first pick on all of these properties and opportunities, and how you guys have been able to amass an amazing portfolio that way?
Yep. Yep. So we our model is cherry pick the best, wholesale the rest, right? So in wholesaling, when you're marketing, you have all these deals coming across your desk, again at less than retail wholesale prices. So what we do is we cherry pick the ones that we want to keep as rentals. They may be in certain neighborhoods that are really nice, and we want to hold those long term. And anything that's outside of that box, we wholesale it off to other cash investors. And I don't know if I know a lot of your audience is multifamily, but wholesaling, the concept of assigning a contract, which is another term for wholesaling, actually comes from commercial real estate. So think about it. You got a guy who maybe he builds McDonald's, or he owns McDonald's
Mhm.
franchises, and he's opening up a new McDonald's in, let's say, Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and he gets a property under contract, right, for a $500,000. He does his market research and he finds out like, oh man, there's already 3 McDonald's in this town. There's not room for any more McDonald's. But he has a buddy who's looking to put a Wendy's in that town. He calls his buddy up and says, hey, listen, I got this land under contract for $500,000. I was going to put a McDonald's there, but they have 3 McDonald's, so the market's already saturated. I know you're looking for a spot for your Wendy's. Hey, I'll assign you my contract. Just give me, 50 grand. I'll assign you my contract. He assigns his contract. He makes 50 grand. His buddy who wants to open the Wendy's pays the $500,000 at closing. Everybody's happy.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so I know that for me and my brothers, we started out with wholesaling. We were cold calling, and even if somebody, because like you said, I think a good percentage of our audience, and so far the show has been mainly focused on multifamily. But for both of us, we ended up in multifamily, even though we started in wholesaling in the single family space. And so I think it's
Mhm.
really powerful, and it's a great strategy people can use. And I'd love to know, I mean, what made you want to kind of start drifting into the multifamily space and going a little bigger? Because I know you guys are now did that multifamily, that mobile home park deal.
Yeah, I mean, from the start, like I said, when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I was like, I don't want to just own one house or 5 houses, 10 houses. I want thousands. Like I want that mailbox money where,
Yeah.
checks are just chasing me and deposits are coming in left and right. And it's way more at the end of the month left over after all expenses are paid. I want a massive cash flow database. And how do you do that? Multifamily real estate, mobile home parks, storage units, all that. So from the beginning, that's been the goal. Wholesaling is just a means to an end. Flipping houses is just a means to an end, again, to make active income, to put it into passive income assets like multifamily.
Yeah, that's a powerful vehicle that people can use, and I think that's why it's so important. That's why I wanted to really emphasize wholesaling at the beginning of the show, because it's a path that maybe somebody in our audience doesn't have money, but that's not an excuse. Just because you don't come from wealth, there's this misconception that you need a lot of wealth, that my brothers and I, we thought you needed a ton of money to get into commercial, and that's why we didn't get into it at first. But once we, learned wholesaling, made some money, we invested in mentorships, which we're big advocates for as well, self-education, and that's what's
Yeah.
allowed us to really accelerate our multifamily journey. And so I do know you guys are big, also fans of driving for dollars. I think you guys have like a program with Deal Machine, but we tried it. It didn't work for us, but I know that it works, and I would just love it if you could explain how you guys are able to create this really unique list of potential home sellers that most people won't have access to. Can you just touch on that and explain how that's been able to help you guys create such a great list and generate a lot of leads and consistent deal flow?
Sure, sure. Probably about 90% of our buy and hold portfolio now came from driving for dollars. Literally, not just us driving, but people we've recruited to drive and send us deals. 90% of our buy and hold portfolio started that way. So what is driving for dollars? Is basically driving around your community or your neighborhood and looking for rundown, beat up, abandoned properties, right? Well, maybe the grass hasn't been cut in 3 weeks, or maybe you just notice. I want you to look at it with a different lens, right? Like growing up, you don't think to look at abandoned or boarded up houses. You just drive by them and you're oblivious. But what if every single, disheveled house that you saw represented a $10,000 deposit in your bank account? Would you start paying attention then?
Yeah.
Right. So that's why everywhere we go, Kerwin, we drive for dollars. I don't care if I'm in the islands, I'm overseas, I'm looking for distressed properties. The mobile home park we bought, we actually found that seller by sending him a postcard 5 years ago. He called us. He was like, "Yeah, I got a property I want to sell. It's a 4-unit apartment." We looked at it. It was trashed. We ended up buying that for $45,000 cash from him. We were going to remodel it. But when we looked at his profile and looked at what he owned like 60 doors. So we're like, man, this guy is a major property owner in this town. So, and we drove by, we like, oh, he owns this mobile home park. We drove by it and it was like trash everywhere. It just looked like your typical trailer park. And we were like, we want that. So we went back to him like, hey, I know we bought the 4-unit from you. We want to buy the mobile home park. He was like, oh, I'll never sell that. I'll never sell. Why? Because mobile home parks are cash cows. They got the highest cash return of any form of real estate. He's like, I'll never sell it. Fast forward 4 years later, we bought multiple properties from him. He ended up selling us the mobile home park. So we literally bought his entire portfolio, and it all came from sending him a postcard from driving for dollars.
That's awesome, and I do want to dive into that deal. Can you? I just want to make sure I touch on it correctly. You did mention some of the benefits of mobile home parks, which I was listening to a show you did, and I didn't know that that was the highest return asset class or niche within real estate. That's really interesting. Can you explain on exactly how you found that opportunity and maybe just walk through the numbers? I think it was a 46 unit portfolio, and you said it was worth 1.5 million, and you were able to get kind of like, but just by improving the condition of the property, you were able to build in that equity. Can you just dive into the numbers and explain why it was such a great investment opportunity for you guys?
Yeah, yeah. So again, most people think of mobile home parks, they think of trailer park, right?
Yeah.
Trailer trash. That's the stigma. The fact is, there's like something like 30 million mobile homes in America, and like 10% of Americans live in a mobile home or a mobile home park. And it's actually one of those last bastions of affordable housing. Like, where else can you live if you own a trailer in a trailer park and you pay like $300 a month for a lot rent? Nowhere, right? Can you afford that, right? So, it does. Mobile home park is the highest cash on cash return of all forms of commercial real estate. And most people don't realize that. Warren Buffett is a mobile home investor. He owns one of the biggest mobile home manufacturing companies in the country. A lot of the big billionaires invested in mobile homes. Most people don't know that. So we like mobile home parks is because your expense ratio, right? With apartments, typically they tell you to set aside 40 to 50% of your monthly revenue to go towards expenses.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is with mobile home parks, you're really renting the land. It's a land play. So think about a mobile home park as like a parking lot, right? Think of it like that. So you don't have the buildings and all this stuff that you got to maintain and pay for maintenance and repairs on. You're literally renting lots. And now some mobile home parks, you own the trailers come with it, but really it's like a mobile home park. It's like a parking lot. So your expense ratio is like 20 to 30% versus 40 to 50% when you think of apartments. So this particular deal, it's a 42 unit mobile home park. here in North Carolina. It's 37 lots. There's 2 single family homes on the property. There's a duplex on the property, and there's a commercial storefront. So it was like the perfect storm. I was like salivating waiting to get this deal. And the seller, like I said, for years told us, no way, I would never sell it. He was like, Dedric, I get about 10 calls a week, people calling me from California, New York, trying to buy my mobile home park. They all offer me over $1 million cash, and I won't sell it. So that's the backdrop. So fast forward, after COVID hits, this particular seller, he's in his 90s. So he's ready to retire. And when COVID hit, his rent collection dropped. So a lot of these people stopped paying rent. So now what used to be his cash cow is no longer his cash cow. So finally, he came to my office one day. We just finished buying another property from him in Durham. And I was like, what about the mobile home park? I still want to buy that one. He was like, you do? I was like, yeah. He was like, all right, I'll sell it to you. I was like, how much? He's like, well, make me an offer. I was like, okay, how about 800,000? He's like, okay, well, what's the terms? I said, I'll give you 2 offers. One offer is a cash offer. I'll give you 600,000 cash, but if you're willing to finance it, I'll be willing to pay you 800,000. He said, okay, well, what are the financing terms? I said, we'll do a $10,000 cash down payment. We'll do, you'll hold a note for 84 months, and the note will be for 790,000. I'll pay you $2,000 a month for the next 84 months. Slid the piece of paper across with him, across the table with the 2 offers. He was like, I'll go with the finance option. Boom. Wrote up the contract, sent it to him. So literally, my down payment to control a mobile home park that's worth over $1 million was 10 grand. Now, when we got to the closing, we closed in the middle of the month. So there was like rent credits that we got credited back to us on the settlement statement, and there were security deposits or whatever. So actually, instead of coming to the closing with a $10,000 check, we actually ended up getting a check back for $3,300. So we got paid to buy a mobile home park.
That's awesome. That's so how many units was that? Can you just clarify?
So it's a total of 42
Okay.
units when you
Wow.
count the single family homes and the mobile homes
Yeah.
lots.
And that was more than double what your portfolio was. That was just one deal, right?
Oh yeah, that
That's
was the biggest
awesome.
deal ever.
That's
And
awesome.
we're in the process of cleaning up the park. We're improving the rent collections. We have a property manager that manages it for us. I say we probably got to put about 100 grand into it, and the ARV of that park would be 1.5 million. But we're not planning to sell it. I mean, this is something we're planning to keep long term in our portfolio.
Yeah, and it sounds like a big skill that you had in your tool belt that really helped you in that transaction to make it such a slam dunk was your negotiation skills. I've heard you mention the importance of having strong negotiation skills, and it sounds like that's one of your strong suits. So can you kind of provide some advice to someone who maybe doesn't have that skill set? How can they approach those kind of conversations to make sure that it's of course a win-win, but they get what the most out of it for them?
Absolutely. So real estate is a numbers game. It comes down to the numbers. So you got to try to take the emotion out of it. And negotiations, it involves, some emotion. Sometimes a lot of people are nervous or afraid of negotiating. I used to be. I never considered myself a good negotiator, especially when I was younger. But I learned it. Negotiation is a learned skill, and I'm always learning how to improve my negotiation skills. You don't get what you want, you get what you negotiate.
Yeah.
Right. And everything is negotiable. My wife hates it because I negotiate almost everything
With her.
but really what helped improve my negotiation skills was this book called Never Split the Difference, and it's by Chris Voss. So Never Split the Difference. Anyone who wants to improve their negotiation skills, read that book, get it on Audible. The author is a former FBI negotiator. So think about it. He was negotiating with like terrorists to like free hostages. So it wasn't like it was money on them. It was like people's lives on the line, depending on his negotiation skills. So, I mean, I learned a ton. Like every year I read that book again, and I pick up something new on negotiating. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, and that's awesome. Another key aspect of that deal, it seems like it was just your timing. I mean, you could continue to follow up with that guy, I'm sure, and it's just nurturing that deal. And you mentioned that you guys are building these really unique lists. And when we were wholesaling, and this is for people that, if they want to get into wholesaling, trying to give some gold nuggets that maybe they won't hear anywhere else. When we were wholesaling, we would buy a list, run through it, and then jump to another list. And it was really rare when we would go back to another list. And we weren't in wholesaling for long enough to really, I think, learn the ways of our failures while we were in the business. I only learned them in hindsight. But you
Mm.
guys have emphasized the importance of hitting a list. And I believe Krystal said that there's some lists where you guys had driving for dollars, and you're still hitting these lists like 4 years later, and you're still getting leads and deals from them. So could you kind of explain how you guys are cycling through your data and why it's important to not really forget about a list and kind of go back through it?
Yeah, that's a good point, Kerwin. So our motto is no lead left behind. No lead left behind. Think about it. You spend all this money and this time and effort and energy to generate this list of these leads.
Mhm.
Then you market to them. But what most people do is they'll market to them once, maybe twice. They'll reach out to them. If they don't get a yes, like, hey, I want to sell you my house tomorrow, they move on. They never go back. So that's opportunity for the investor who's consistent with their marketing. So consistency is the key to being successful in marketing, right? I think I read somewhere it was like the average seller, you have to contact them anywhere between 8 and 12 times before you get a response. Again, most investors, I don't care if they're wholesalers, landlords, whatever, they'll reach out one, maybe two times, and then they'll throw up their hands and give up. They're not interested. While the pros have a system and reach out 8 to 12 times in a short period of time, you don't get anything, you put them on the back burner. 6 months from now, circle back to them. You never know. COVID may have happened. COVID changed everything. They may have not been ready to sell pre-COVID, post-COVID. Something happened. Now they need to sell. Again, job loss, death, divorce, life happens that changes someone who may say, we've had countless people say, you know what? I'll never sell that house. It's in Durham. I'll never sell it. Okay, well, thank you. You mind if we circle back with you in 6 months or a year? Yeah, I don't care. 6 months or a year, we call them. Okay, my tenant just moved out. They trashed the place. I don't want to deal with this. I'm ready to sell.
Yeah.
So you have old lists from wholesaling and you don't want to touch them, send them over to us. We'll reach out to them, and we'll also send you a finder's fee for some of any deals that come from it.
I love that. I love that. And of course, I think you guys among other investors and entrepreneurs are serial entrepreneurs. You have multiple ventures at this point. And I think a key to that has allowed you to kind of scale to that success is being able to scale your wholesaling operation. If you could briefly just kind of touch on how you guys have been able to scale your wholesaling operation and maybe put yourself in a position where you're not in the day-to-day, like on the phones calling and think just, actually involved in the business in the trenches every single day. So you've been able to explore other ventures and grow your business and investment portfolio.
Sure. We have like 5 different businesses, all related to real estate. And again, our wholesaling operation, I've been able to take myself out of the day-to-day by hiring an acquisition manager. So we have an acquisition manager, we have cold callers, we have people that send out text messages on our behalf. So kind of do the marketing for us. And our acquisitions person, we have several of them. They know how to actually make offers. So a lot of deals I don't even touch until it's under contract. I'm like, okay, we
Get the
got under
paycheck.
contract. Now, yeah, let me figure out if I want to keep this in the portfolio as a rental or if I want to wholesale it or flip it. So we have acquisition managers. We have, that's kind of our team. We have a transaction coordinator. We have a disposition manager. We have executive assistant. So we have a whole team built around that business. So that's our wholesaling business. We also do flips. So we have a television show called 50/50 Flip on A&E where, they came down to North Carolina and they actually chronicled and documented as we flipped 10 units, 6 properties. So if you go on A&E and just search 50/50 Flip, you can see how we actually flip houses. So we don't just wholesale all the houses, we flip a lot of them. And then of course we have our buy and hold entity. We have the mobile home parkers is a separate entity. We also have a syndication entity that we've set up for future syndication deals. So yeah.
That's awesome. And so I do want to talk about your show, but we could just actually dive into that. How has that helped you with your branding and maybe attracting investors and capital, or what were some ancillary benefits of having a show? Because I mean, I think I could probably think of some of them, but were there any that you weren't really expecting that kind of popped up as you had your own TV show and got a lot of attention that way?
Yeah. First of all, I never imagined that I'd have you dream as a kid, like, oh, it would be cool to be on TV one day, but you don't really think it would actually happen. But
Yeah.
I'm definitely thankful that, we were blessed with that opportunity. And
Congrats.
I mean, thank you. Thank you. It's been amazing. I mean, first of all, you get instant credibility, when someone sees you on TV, and we literally flipped houses on TV. And the concept of the show is called 50/50 Flip. So we flip houses in 50 days or less for 50K or less in renovation costs. So yeah, I mean, we have people who just pick up the phone and call us like, "Hey, I saw you on TV. I want to sell you my house." Or I saw you on TV. I have some money and sitting in the bank. I want to invest with you guys. So I mean, it's been amazing.
That's awesome. I'm not sure if you mentioned all the other ventures you were involved in. Are you actually currently involved in Airbnb as well?
Oh,
Okay.
I forgot about
No,
Airbnb.
no, that's fine.
We have so many,
No, I
Curran.
love
Like,
it. I love it. It's you just can't keep track of all. You got people for that. You have people to keep track of them.
exactly. No, so
Um,
with Airbnbs, we actually have converted a lot of our single family rentals into short-term rentals at Airbnbs.
mhm.
Why? It comes down to the numbers. We looked at our numbers and our profit and loss from previous years, and we were like, okay, this single family house is a regular rental, 1 year lease is making us like $300 a month cash flow. But our Airbnb over here, this is also a single family house, we're clearing $1,500 a month cash flow. It was simple math. So we
Yeah.
started converting. So we now have 5 Airbnbs in our portfolio.
And where are they?
Mostly in the Alamance County area.
Okay.
So Burlington, Graham, Mebane, North Carolina.
Awesome. Because I saw a post you made on Instagram about the Atlanta regulations, and I thought that was fascinating. I was not going to have you on the show and not talk about it. What's happening there? If you could briefly just touch on that, because I think that's a good indicator for maybe where we're headed as a country, or in terms of like the policies that are going on. I think it's important for anyone because that's a really trendy thing right now. Airbnb, a lot of people want to get into it. So if they want to get into it, what are some potential hurdles that might be coming in the future, and how is Atlanta kind of like an example of what might be coming?
Yeah, I mean, Airbnb is great. Like I said, you're more in the hospitality business versus the
Mhm.
landlording business as an Airbnb owner. So that's key. And we're going to be coming out with some courses on how we scaled to 5 Airbnbs. But depending on where you live and where you want to have your Airbnbs, there may or may not be regulations.
Mhm.
We're blessed here in Alamance County. I don't know how it is in Durham, but there's really very lax regulations around short-term rentals. Like you got to let the city know that you're doing a short-term rental, but other than that, they pretty much leave you alone. Versus in Atlanta, now because of the proliferation of Airbnbs and people using them as party houses and different issues that have gone on, they've come out with regulations, right? You got investors who have 10, 20 Airbnbs in Atlanta, so it's taking up some of the existing housing stock. So there's various reasons, but in Atlanta, you got to like live in the city of Atlanta. You can only have 2 Airbnbs. One has to be your primary residence. So they're really cracking down. So I would say look at just Google Airbnb regulations, your city, and you'll see what are the regulations, and then you'll be able to operate accordingly.
Yeah, no, I just thought that was fascinating. And I think it's so important. We always talk about in terms of like if the state is landlord friendly, if there's rent control and the multifamily space, there's just a lot of things that the local government can have an impact on your real estate. And a lot of people might just buy a property because it makes sense, but then don't understand all the other implications and the external factors that might impact their cash flow and returns.
That's what we did in Cleveland. So we don't just operate in North Carolina. We buy houses nationwide. We buy
Mhm.
apartments, mobile home parks nationwide. So 3 or 4 years ago, we heard about the Cleveland market, right? You hear about Cleveland, Detroit. You can buy houses for 10, 15,000, right? We learned why. We went into the Cleveland market. We bought several dilapidated quadplexes out there. We bought two of them side by side for like, I think it was like 15 grand or yeah, 15 grand each. So
Nice.
two huge brick apartment buildings, but they were dilapidated. They needed full gut rehabs. And we found out that it's very hard to find reliable contractors. Hard to find
Mhm.
contractors locally in your own city, let alone if it's 1,000 miles away.
Yep.
So, and then the pandemic hit, COVID hit. So we decided to just liquidate and sell all our holdings in Cleveland. But that's kind of a lesson on that.
No, I love that. And that actually is a great leeway into our speed round. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Lightning
Awesome.
round.
Awesome. Yeah. So, first question, what has been a major failure or learning lesson, as we like to call them, that you've experienced along your real estate journey? And what did you take away from the experience?
That's a good question. Um, Yeah, I think going back to that first 4 unit property we bought from that the guy we ended up selling us his whole portfolio. We bought it for $45,000. It needed everything. It needed a gut rehab to the stud. So we started getting bids from contractors like how much it's going to cost to fix up. And us in our ignorance, we thought 50, 75,000 to fix up, but the rehab costs were coming back at like 100, 150,000. So it made the numbers not make sense. And for a while, we kind of like wallowed in our misery, like, oh man, now we own this place. Now we got a mortgage to pay. We got to figure it out. And then we called our mentor and explained the situation. We were like, hey, we bought this property. The rehab is going to be like twice what we thought it was. It doesn't make financial sense anymore. What do we do? And he was like, how much you buy for? We were like, $45,000. He was like, just sell it. And I was like, oh, I'm all like stressed out about this. He was like, just sell it. So we just put it on the MLS as is for like 55,000. And we just sold it as is. It took like 30 days and we were done. On to the next one.
That's awesome. I love that. Now, so looking to the future, what are you guys aiming to accomplish more long term, and what are your goals moving forward?
Yeah, great question. So our goal is to a few goals. So one of them is to own 10,000 units, whether they be mobile home lots, multifamily. That's our 10-year goal. We're well on our way to that. Also to provide affordable housing. So a portion of that, I'd say, 1 to 2%, we want to be able to set aside for homeless and affordable housing, because we know that's very important. And then also just continue to grow our business and our brand, and continue to inform and educate, and inspire others.
I love that. And you guys are doing that with all the content and all the stuff you guys are putting out. So it's awesome. Um,
Thank
I would love to know, and this is one of my favorite questions to ask every guest we have. What is your why?
Oh man, my why is really my family. My wife, we have 2 young sons, an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. And my why is to really provide them with options. When they become adults, I don't want them to have to work because they have to. I want them to pursue a life and pursue what they're passionate about. So, we're working so hard now, not just for them, but also for future generations. Our goal, Krystal and I, our goal is to build generational wealth. So we want 5, 6 generations from now, again, to be able to not to be lazy or spoiled, but to have the resources to say, okay, I'm able to do what I want, and I'm able to pursue my passions, whether I want to be a full-time philanthropist, or I want to be an entrepreneur, or I want to work a job. I have the options to do that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. I love that. And you shared a ton of value today. I really appreciate all the value you brought to our audience today. If there was one piece of advice or wisdom that you would want someone in our audience to walk away with from the episode, what would that be?
I would be that would be, get started. Get started. Take the path of the Donis brothers. These guys, they inspire me. You guys, quit college, right? And jumped into fulfilling your passion and your purpose full time. So feel the fear, take the action, do it anyway, and make it happen.
Thank you. I appreciate that. If anyone in our audience wants to learn more about the Polites or follow your show, you on social media, and just follow you on your journey, where can they go to learn more?
Yeah, excuse me. So yeah, our TV show is called 50/50 Flip. It's on A&E. It's available on demand. So it's watch it on Hulu or any of the on-demand streaming services. Just type in 50/50 Flip. We also have a YouTube channel. It's under Be Polite Properties. So we put out tons of educational content on YouTube. Our website, politeproperties.com. You can feel free to contact us or email us there. And then we're also on all the social media. So Instagram under Dedric Polite and Krystal Polite, Facebook. We just started a TikTok. So we're learning that, how the TikTok works. And we're actually coming out with a flipping course and an Airbnb course in the next 30 to 45 days. So stay tuned for that. And we'll make sure, we put that in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Dedric. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Oh, always a pleasure, Kerwin. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.